welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're diving into a new series today. This is the Dirty Billionaire trilogy, and it's by Meghan March, and the first book in the series is called Dirty Billionaire. Holly Wicks is the winner of a show called Country Dreams, and she's also in a relationship with a country star named JC, and his star is fading, by the way. So the relationship is a farce. It was forced on her as a publicity stunt by her label, which is called Homegrown Records. So one day she's in the grocery store, and plastered across a gossip mag is her boyfriend JC with another woman, and the woman has on a large strap on. So apparently JC goes both ways, right? So this isn't the first time this has happened. This is like the second time in a very short period of time that these type of stories have leaked out. So she has to endure like another 6 months of this before she can get out of this relationship. So while she's having a mini freak out, a woman says to her how awful like all men are and then offers her like a shoulder to talk to. Well, of course she's skeptical because she's thinking like, you know, I confide in you and you run and tell the news, outlet, right? But then she looks at the woman's finger and she sees like this large diamond ring, and then she looks at her face and she realizes that this is Tana Vines, and she's apparently like a big country star from like 10 years ago. So safe to say she feels a little comfortable, and she goes to Tana's mega mansion, and they drink, and she meets her husband, who's also like a country legend, and his name is Mick Vines. So the Mick guy tells her, she has to play it smart because staying with that guy makes her look like a doormat. But her thing is, yeah, but if I leave, they basically tell me they're going to send me back to Kentucky, back to the bowling alley where they found me. So she's too drunk to drive home, so she just stay the night in their guest house. We fast forward about 2 months, and JC has been caught in another like 3 more scandals. So Holly's decided, you know what, I have had enough of this. So she marches into the office of Homegrown Records and to speak with the execs, because she's like, I'm tired of this, Well, she didn't expect for JC to actually be in the office as well, but he was. But she was like, you know what? Oh well, I'm tired of this. I want out. So one of the head guys tells her, that she will stay involved with JC, or they will put her on a bus back to her Podok hometown. And they even come up with a plan for them to get engaged. So JC is scheduled to do the Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve celebration in New York City, and he apparently is going to do it there. So they tell her if she stays engaged for like 4 months, then she'll be free from like any more obligations. So her contract is also going to be over in 4 months. So she tells them she doesn't think she can do it. But after talking to Tana later on that day, she finds out that a popular blogger has uploaded a picture of JC purchasing an engagement ring. So Tana kind of lets her know, like, you kind of need to come up with a plan because they've already got this ball rolling. The book switches POV, which I love because I love to hear it from different perspectives. And we meet Creighton. And he is actually the guy that was on the magazine cover that Holly saw when she was at Tana's house. And the first thing she thought, of course, was like, how incredibly gorgeous this man is, but also like the things that he could do to her body. Now, this was a little weird for her to feel that way because her primary focus has been her music. So she's gone quite a bit of time without any. She's been, touring, and it just hasn't been something on her mind because she's not screwing with JC. That's just a whole, publicity relationship. So we bounce back. We're in New York City. Creighton's at a bar. He's basically bored because he normally, he's the type of person, some people when they're bored, they get themselves in trouble. That's Creighton. So he was thinking about calling some chicks over to like have like a threesome or a foursome, but like that wasn't even appealing to him at this point. So Creighton owns half of New York City, and he basically needs a challenge because that is what gets his adrenaline going. So Holly's in New York City as well, so we know where this is going. And she's there for that Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve bash. And she decides that she's going to give herself a Christmas gift. She's going to give herself a man this year. So she goes down to the bar, and she's at the Plaza Hotel. She orders herself a drink. And there's this guy she could tell he's a businessman, but he's like out of shape, you know. And he offers to buy her a drink, but he's clearly sleazy. And he puts his hand on her thigh. And thankfully, she's rescued by Creighton Karras himself. So he says, "Get your hands off my wife." The guy has an attitude and it's like, you need to keep her on a leash. I was like, dang. But he just tells him to get his hands off and to pay his bill, and he needs to leave a nice tip. So the guy, at first he wasn't budging, but I guess when he looked at him, he saw this guy's not playing. And so he paid the bill and he left. So she played along with him. She recognized who he was and was starting to think, maybe I can get my Christmas gift. They have this great banter back and forth, and she asks, if he's married, and he says no, and asks if she wanted to be married, and she says no. Then she tells him, she was looking for a hot guy to see where the night will take him. So he asked her to go to his place, and she was like, I have a room here. So he gets a bottle from the bartender, pays him a great tip, and then they head up to her room. So on the way up to the room, she starts thinking she starts having that unworthy feeling, right? So she's thinking how the hell am I worthy of this billionaire guy? He's probably had every supermodel. So they get to the room and they start kissing, and of course it's this mind-blowing kiss, and he tells her, take off everything but leave your panties and your boots on. And so she complies. She also told him no names, even though technically she already knows his. But she was just no names, because she really just wanted one night and nothing else. So he talks super dirty, which is so hot, right? So he likes to say things to her that she's not accustomed to, and she didn't even realize it was going to turn her on as much as it did. So he starts eating her pussy, and then he slams into her, and his thoughts are this is the best pussy I've ever had. So they fuck 3 more times that night, and then he wakes up to an empty bed, and he searches the room, but old girl is gone. So Creighton's I'm not done with her. So he puts out a PR ad that says he's looking for the woman he met at the plaza, whom he shared an encounter with. And if she comes to the location of the tryst on December 31st at midnight, he will give her an engagement ring and a prenup to sign. So Holly's back home, and she drops her plate when she reads this because it's all over the news. So Tana calls her and was like, tell me you're going to go. So she tells her she can't because of the contract with Homegrown Records. And Tana says, he has enough money to buy you out of that contract, as well as buy the whole label. You should go and negotiate. If he's willing to go through all this to find you, I'm sure he's willing to give you what you want. So she decides she's going to go to New York City, but she hasn't made a decision on which location she's going to be at midnight. So Creighton's waiting in the room they were in, which is room 1919 at the plaza. And he's watching CNN as his uncle is saying how unprofessional his behavior is and why the investors need to meet about this. So apparently his uncle doesn't want him in the position of CEO. Holly's still going back and forth about where she's going to go. And the countdown starts. 60, 59, 58. So of course our girl goes to room 1919. He was like, it's good you were on time, otherwise I would have to punish you. And he asks her for her name, and she tells him. And then she tells him, that she's a country singer. And then he gets pissed because he realizes he's heard of her before because his assistant is like a big fan of hers. And so he tells her, I don't do whores. I was like, shit. So she's upset and she's about to leave when he stops her and he demands an answer. And so she tells him about how she's gone like 14 months without a man and the whole story about the fake relationship. So he hands her her coat and she's thinking like he's even more of an asshole, you know, than what she thought. But he told her to put the coat on because we're going to Vegas. So he was pissed because he thought like, oh, she has a boyfriend. Like, why is she here? Oh my gosh. So they get married in Vegas, and then on the way back to the hotel, they're in the limo and she sucks his cock, she swallows his cum, and he carries her to the room. And before they reach the door, she fell asleep. The next morning, they get a call from Cannon, and he works for Creighton. He's like his VP. And he's like, they're calling her a cheating whore, like all over the blogs and the news. So Creighton tells him, kill the story. And he feeds him a story to put out. But we don't know exactly what that story is. So they wake up and we find out that Holly's 22, Creighton's 33. He thought she was older because I guess with makeup, it made her look older. But, you know, fresh face, she looked younger. They go in the shower and he says to her kind of roughly like that she'll take his cock when and however he tells her to. And she didn't like his tone, and so she punches him in the jaw and tells him he needs to watch how he talks to her. So then he says, we need to talk. So they sit down and talk, but it doesn't get far because she explains that what he said made her feel like a whore. And she knows she probably is. And she's thinking about that one night stand, the initial like one night stand that they had. And he told her, don't you ever call yourself a whore. And I'm sorry for making you feel that way. But I say what I want. That's just who I am. So then she gets turned on, and then he strips and they fuck hard and he comes in her pussy. But then he starts eating her pussy. That's kind of weird to me, but okay, if that's what floats your boat, okay. So, and it freaked her out a little bit too. So then he asks her if she has ever been fucked in the ass, and she says no. Well, he tells her eventually you will take my dick in your ass, but for right now I'm going to just finger fuck you. So he does that while he eats her pussy, and that's just what drove her over and beyond wild. So when Holly wakes up, she finally calls back Morty at the label, and he is livid. He tells her that they had spent a lot of money on this proposal. So she told them, I told you I couldn't fall in line with it. So Morty tells her she better not miss a tour date, and he needs 6 songs written by her in 3 weeks, or she's going to be back in Kentucky at that bowling alley where he found her from. It's so fucked up that they use that same excuse every time to threaten her. That is so fucked up. So she agrees, and then Creighton, who had been listening to the conversation, asks her, do you need me to crush him? And she's like, what do you mean? And he says it again. He's like, do you need me to crush your label? And she was like, no, but I do have to make sure I'm back in Nashville by the 6th. So he tells her that's unacceptable, as his schedule comes first. And she tells him, nope, I'm done. She's like, her career is non-negotiable. And she starts packing her stuff. So they go back and forth. And he finally concedes. He tells her, I will make sure that you're back in Nashville on the 4th, 2 days before you have to be, and that they will work out the schedule situation so she won't miss any tour dates. And I like that because she shouldn't have to miss. Listen, this is her career. Yes, she married you, but she shouldn't have to like give that up. She's already like doing something she doesn't want now to try and keep this career, and to think you're going to rip it from her, that's not going to work. So I was proud of her for standing up for that, for having a boundary, you know. While they're on the plane, they're on their way back on the PJ, the private jet. They have another conversation, and he tells her that, you know, if she just take the stick out of her ass and bend for him, it will be the most pleasurable experience. And he tells her to let her burdens be his burdens and trust him to take care of them. And now that line got her. Because, you know, anyone who's so used to carrying the load all to themselves, to hear someone say, I'll take the load off of you, that's probably more of a turn on than anything he could ever say to her. Because It's like, oh my gosh, something I don't have to worry about when you're so used to worrying about everything. So that got her. And so she tells him, okay. So he thinks in his mind like he wants her mind, body, and soul. He then tells her to strip and to sit on his face, which she does, and he wrings out like 2 orgasms from her. They get back to his place in Manhattan. Of course, it's the penthouse. He takes up the whole floor. It's huge. He already has a wardrobe in the closet for her, and she, of course, is like, I'm not a Stepford wife. And he's like, I know that, which is, if I wanted that, I would have married one of those gold diggers that are after me, So the stylist said that it was all country chic. So I guess should kind of fall into what she would wear. So he tells her he has to go to the office to handle some things that require his attention, and that he'll see her in the morning. He tells her, the fridge is full, so you can just have anything you want. So when he leaves, she starts looking around, and the words just start coming to her, and she gets out her note, but then she was like, damn it, I don't have a guitar. But she starts writing, and she kind of sings, along to get some lyrics together. And she's like, tomorrow I'll go and I'll get a guitar. So she wakes up. He's not in bed. And she does see a text message from him saying that he had to leave and he'll see her later. So she leaves to go look for a guitar. So Holly spends the whole day at the guitar shop. The owner told her, she could come by. She could play anytime. And she comes home later that evening, and Creighton's there. And he is pissed. And he's like, where the fuck have you been? And she's like, excuse me? And he was like, I have been calling you with no response. I thought you had run. So she sees this vulnerable moment, and then he kills it with, you can't run away from me. Like, there's no way you could go there. I wouldn't find you. Like, damn. So he asks her again where she was, and she tells him, I needed a guitar. So I went to a guitar shop. And he's like, shit, I didn't even think about that. He was like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, well, I'll be back in Nashville in 2 days, and I have like 2 perfectly good ones there. And he says, you'll pick one out, and I'll have it delivered for you tomorrow. And if you don't pick it out, one will be picked for you. So then he tells her to strip, which she does. And he tells her how much he wants her sweet ass. And so he starts eating her pussy, and then he leaves and he goes to get a small butt plug and some lube. So he tells her he wants to fuck her while her ass is filled up. So he puts in the butt plug, fucks her hard until she just completely unravels. So he screams out, it's mine, when he comes. So he runs a bath for her, and he puts her in, and she's still kind of out of it because, that orgasm did something to her. So she's still a little loopy. So he asked her, like, do you want me to remove the butt plug? And she's like, no, because I need to get used to it if we're going to do other things. And he was just on cloud nine when he heard that. He was like, oh, she's perfect. She's just perfect for me. So he just tells her, you are freaking amazing. He knows he's fallen, but he can't quite say it just yet. So they eat sushi that night, which was amazing. And she was mad at herself for not trying it sooner because this is her first time eating it. So he tries to teach her how to use the chopsticks. Epic fail. She asks him if the plane is set to take her back in 2 days. And he goes to make the call. And then he asks her about being a Kentucky girl. And she winds up telling him everything and then starts crying. So apparently her mother moved from trailer to trailer after hooking up with different men. And then one day her mom met this guy who had enough money to buy her a Cadillac Eldorado, but he didn't want any kids. So she took Holly to go live with her grandmother. What a piece of shit of a mother. But if she was not good as a mother, then you should, put them somewhere where they would be safe. At least that was a halfway decent idea. So her grandmother was awesome. She loved her to pieces. And she started singing at the bowling alley where she worked. And the owner thought she was super good and was like, you should try out for Country Dreams. So when the finale rolled around, of course, her mother had started coming around when she knew she was on TV. And her mother wanted to be there for the finale. And so because of that, the grandmother was home by herself and she fell and she hit her head and she never woke up. So, of course, Holly blames herself because she feels like her going after her dreams took out her grandmother. She starts crying, and she walks. She's like, you know what? She just leaves and goes to um the bath to take a shower, just to get away, because she had been very vulnerable. And so Creighton yells out to her, this conversation isn't over. And I'm like, geez Louise, give the girl a minute. Like, she just had like a breakdown telling you some hardcore shit. Like, give her a moment. Holly goes to take a shower, and he hears her singing in the bathroom, and he just watches her. And so then she sees him and asks him to take out the butt plug. And he's like, why did you ask me? And she said, well, you were the one that put it in. You should be the one to take it out. So then he pumps it like in and out of her a few times before he actually removes it. And then he takes it and puts it away. And then when he comes back, she's like rubbing her clit, and she's coming down from like an orgasm. And he tells her that she wasn't supposed to do that. And so then he fucks her throat, comes in her mouth, and then he eats her pussy and makes her come like 3 times. And he doesn't think like he will ever get enough of her. So he goes to work the next morning. She gets a delivery. It's a Gibson guitar. I don't know a lot about guitars, but I do know that those things are super expensive. So he even has her name inscribed on it. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. So she was in heaven, and she starts trying to think of like ways that she could thank him for this like awesome gift. So he comes home that evening, and he takes her to dinner. She thinks she's going to have to change, but he says, no, you're perfectly fine as you are. So he takes her to a bar in Midtown that has like this mechanical bull. She, of course, rides it for a good amount of time. They eat. He lets her know that he will be going with her to Nashville. And the next day she's waiting for him, and he isn't responding to her. And the time is now after 4 p.m. So she calls his office, and he doesn't come to the phone, but his VP, Cannon, does. And Cannon tells her, they're in the middle of this like high stakes negotiation, and that Creighton can't come to the phone. So she tells him, don't even worry about it. And she hangs up. So she gets a message from Morty that the bus is leaving out tonight, and she better be on it. So she decides to get a flight back to Nashville, and she leaves everything and she heads out. And that is how book 1 ends. So the next book in this series is called Dirty Pleasures. So we will dive into that one next week. What did you guys think of this one? I like this. I mean, whenever the ones say like billionaire thing, I don't know, but I just think it's cute how they met, not expecting anything, not wanting anything, and that intense chemistry that they feel with one another. I just always love stories like that. I think it's the sweetest thing. So tell me what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and discussion board and let me know. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. As always, I truly do thank you guys for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.